somewhere in South Carolina, undisclosed location. Robert, where are you? You're in the Bay, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. Okay, Robert's sharing his Miro board, which everyone should have access to. So, well, first of all, let's just go through kind of what's happened in the past month.
Yeah.
All right. So, in the past month, we completed the mint rush with 55 Bitcoin, and we had an initial price of Libre of about 26 sats, right? And 95% of it locked with a 3 million market cap of Libre, and we had about, I don't know, $14,000 in the liquidity pool or something like that. Hey, Robert, can you bring up the dashboard for us? So now today we're at something like 5.3 million TVL, 5.277. Libre is at 27 sats, which is about 0.6 of a penny, and Bitcoin price is now 23,000. It was like 17,000 a week ago. So things are looking really good. We have 5,000 daily active users, 2,300 new accounts, and got 73 Bitcoin on chain, which is awesome because only 55 of that's the mint rush. There's a bunch in liquidity pool, a bunch on the sidelines waiting to do stuff. And the market cap of Libre is now 3.5 million. Right now, there's APYs on the farming pools are also really high right now. So those are based on how much liquidity they are. It's an estimation based on the value of Libre and how much liquidity there is. So the more valuable Libre is, the higher the reward is, the higher the APY is technically because it's a calculation. And the less liquidity in the pool, the higher the reward is. So right now, the rewards are somewhere around 190% for Tether to Bitcoin and 160% for BTC to Libre, right?
Well, that one's really come down.
Yeah, so it's actually coming down. So more higher percentage is going to the farm, as you can see, like as people claim and move that money into the farm. So if you're in the mint rush, I recommend claiming and then staking it every day. It's a good exercise. But dashboard does not work well on mobile, so you have to use a computer. I highly recommend using a computer to do it. But anyways, that's really good. So like the good news is that the mint rush went off without we didn't fuck that up. Right? And actually it went really well. We had set a kind of internal target of 50 Bitcoin and we surpassed that by 10%. And so that was great. And we got it done even in the bear market with $1 million, which is awesome.
Bear staff of Proton News don't interact with Three-Eyed Raven. Why do you think you need to?
Let's mute. Let's mute. Okay, that's good. So anyways, so that's really great. And now the farming is great. And so like product wise, like Libre, the core stuff is almost completely done. We've got some small things. So like on our side, one of the things we're working with Edenia, I don't think they're on the call right now, but Edenia is working on the voting to get the voting working in the DAO with the stake tokens instead of liquid. And so that will make the DAO active. And then the DAO has been funded with the remaining funds from the airdrop. So quick report on that is about 270,000 Libre was claimed in the airdrop out of 10 million. That's it. So we stopped it and sent all the remaining Libre straight to the DAO. There was some talk about, well, maybe we should have a slush fund or maybe we should keep some of it for some other blah, blah, blah. But we decided, let's give it all to the DAO. That would be the fairest thing. And then we will all vote on it together and decide how that Libre can be allocated, right? So the DAO has plenty of Libre now, and it's going to accumulate Libre as well from the claims. So over this next year, it's going to accumulate.
So we computed out that the DAO will accumulate over the next 100 million Libre over the next.
Just from the existing stakes in the pool.
Right.
Like it's not an estimation; it's guaranteed to accumulate 100 million Libre into the DAO.
Correct. Unless people emergency on stake, maybe.
I guess, yeah. If you
Yeah.
people emergency on stake, it could be less if there's a massive, but for the most part, we looked at the existing stakes table and we calculated out that based on how much gets created, about 10% of it. So
I think that from our perspective, not the validator perspective, but just kind of like from the product perspective, the main things that we see we are working on, there's really three things. First thing is we're going to finish up this audit. So we have an audit that's in place with Surtech. And so that audit, we just met with Surtech again.
yeah, they're here in Miami, actually.
They're here in Miami, and we should have the seal has been audited, et cetera. I think next week. What do you think?
I think so. The good news is there was no major concerns really, just some minor stuff that doesn't really affect the mint rush or the staking. It's kind of just preferences of Surtech's developers.
Right.
But we're meeting all their preferences, going through line by line, answering their like 20 things they wanted to have changed.
The second thing,
So we'll have that
yeah,
badge that we can put on the dashboard, or everyone can put that on their websites or whatever, like Surtech audit badge. It's cool.
So the second thing is we are starting next week with Edenia writing the smart contracts for something I'm very excited about, which is going to be a perpetual Bitcoin USDT leveraged perpetual, right? That allows you to put USDT in a pool, get a fixed rate of return on that USDT in the pool, and then that USDT will be lent out to people who want to go leverage long Bitcoin. Okay, so basically it's very similar to like a Binance perp or the old FTX perp or a BitMEX perp, but entirely done in DeFi, right? So we've worked out all the math for that, and we've worked
This
out
might
the
sound
model.
like who cares? What's the point? Well, the point is that this is something that people are absolutely going nuts for, traders.
Yeah.
And it allows you to earn Bitcoin when you stake Bitcoin and earn Tether when you stake Tether into these pools.
So the Tether, it'll allow people to give a yield, let's just say 10%, right? 10% yield on Tether, right? Not in Libre, but a Tether yield on Tether when staking Tether to the pool, and that Tether yield will be available for people to borrow to buy these leveraged positions on Bitcoin. So if somebody wants to go 10x long on Bitcoin, they will be able to do that, and as well after that to be able to short Bitcoin, right? To be able to short Bitcoin, including with leverage, by borrowing Bitcoin from a pool and then paying a Bitcoin return on Bitcoin. So a yield that's paid in Bitcoin on Bitcoin. Again, it entirely done in DeFi. So we've figured all that stuff out. We're gonna have Edenia start building that. We have a UI sort of plan for that. And so that I think is a big, it probably will take a couple months to really get that done, but I think it's a really big evolution of this product because it now puts us in very much like GMX or DYDX, right? Which are, there's a lot of talk right now.
There's a lot of trading activity too. We saw this week that there was complaints on Twitter that DYDX earned $300 million in trading.
Right.
The problem there is that it's all going to DYDX Trading LLC instead of to the liquidity providers. So that's the exact opposite of what happens in our situation.
So that should be, I don't think that the smart contract side will take more than a month on this first version. And then
but it's going to be very good for adoption.
Very good,
very good.
And it will very clearly differentiate the Libre product, both from a yield perspective, like offering a high yield on USDT. That'll be great, without doing any kind of farming on Curve or anything else like that. And second, I think being able to provide people with, to be able to go and take punts on Bitcoin. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is the bridge, right? So we have been thinking a lot about our dependency on P network, right? And while we don't want to want to just kill this. We don't want to do exactly what we did with Proton, which is like, okay, we're changing all your Proton tokens for Libre tokens or anything like that. We do want to start looking at our own version of a
bridge, decentralized bridge for Bitcoin, and potentially Tether too.
Right.
And doesn't mean we would kill the PBTC stuff, but this version would be something that would be run by validators using multi-sigs on Bitcoin. So we have an initial spec about that. It doesn't require a ton of extra infrastructure. It's really just running an Electrum wallet and a Docker image, which can both be run in Dockers or on the same Docker.
So basically what happens is, let's say somebody wants to pay out, let's just say this thing's called LBTC, Libre Bitcoin, right? So I have 1 LBTC and I want to turn that into 0.995 BTC. How do I do it? Okay. Well, somebody's going to say, okay, I'm going to send this Bitcoin to the bridge account. It's going to wait for it to confirm. And then one of the validators is going to initiate a
partially signed Bitcoin transaction, which is all part of Electrum.
Right.
So it's a very small piece of software that will just watch Libre chain for certain actions in the table, and then start these partially signed Bitcoin transactions and then broadcast them on chain, probably slightly compressed because they're quite large, like 315 characters. But there'll be some way to pass it to the next active BP and the next active BP. And not every BP will have to be a signer, but if you sign up to be a signer, you'll be able to earn in the fees of the Bitcoin going in and out. So there's an incentive for validators to be a multi-sig signer. And there's a responsibility. Obviously, you have to keep track of your key for your wallet. The multi-sigs are based on these XPubs. So when a multi-sig is created between the BPs or validators, everyone will have to report their XPubs on a table is the way we're kind of planning out to it. But we talked to a team in Romania who's experts at building bridges. And so we're thinking about bringing them in to actually build this bridging tech. But it's a great opportunity for validators to earn some Bitcoin by running an extra piece of software. And really, it's great for Libre because Libre will be even more valuable in the election of those validators who can be pegging in and out Bitcoin. And
this could be a voluntary thing. So if a validator says, I'm not comfortable being a signer for Bitcoin, exactly, then they could sort of opt out of that. Right.
Yeah. Like I imagine some people don't want to do that. That's fine. You won't have to, but the more validators we have doing it, the better it is for the security of the Bitcoin. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what happens there. That's probably more like a Q3 thing of this year is what we're thinking about. And that's kind of what's on our roadmap now. The good news is with the DAO funding that if anyone has ideas, one of the validators from Good Block, Doug Horn, was saying we should get bridges to Telos and Wax and EOS and all these kinds of things. We're like, fantastic. If you want to put it in the DAO, let's all vote on it together. And someone reached out the other day like, oh, I want to do community management for Libre. It's like, great, we should put that in the DAO. And if it's something that benefits the chain overall, we should put a DAO proposal in and try to get funding from the DAO to cover those types of things.
Right.
Right. It's good. That kind of stuff would be very, very good because, so far, there's been very little of that in EOS. One of the things I was very excited about in the EOS.io ecosystem in the beginning is that people could put work proposals together to do any work and then get funding from the chain, Yeah. Honestly, any day. They might be a little bit waiting on me for the test net to help them test something.
Next week it'll be done for sure, I think. So
no, there's not enough unstaked tokens to even get 10%.
No.
Now, the truth is that 10% threshold could be changed by BPs, but we think 10% kind of makes sense. It's a number that we just arbitrarily chose in the beginning.
Well, it's not completely arbitrary. We copied it from Compound.
Yeah.
Well, that's how Compound did the sort of same thing. Now,
we're learning from what's working.
I will say this: there's one other thing is, there's, even though we don't the DAO proposal, the DAO can only do one thing. A DAO proposal, it can send Libre to an account,
That's
right?
it, yeah.
That's it right now. However, I think we should look at the DAO also for doing any kind of systemic modification of the chain, right? For example, it's been Doug Horn said, hey, we should like get a version of Libre on Uniswap, right? And we should incentivize that pool.
Yeah.
Well, even though there's no way to do that, I think we should use the DAO for that, right? So I think that it would be great if we could say, hey, we believe that this pool should be created and that the chain should be amended to do, to elect blank amount of Libre per block to this Uniswap incentivization pool. And then this is sort of instructions for the BPs, to perform a multi-sig and vote on that. So I'm not at all opposed to doing that, something like that. And actually there's some very counterintuitive things in the SEC recently. So the SEC recently in the Mango markets,
they ruled that the Mango markets DAO had a problem, and the problem was that the DAO could execute code, which is something that only like a handful of people, like very few, less than a hand, could understand the code and vote on it competently. And they thought that was actually undemocratic. Okay. So they said basically that made it so that it was bad in their view that the executable code was in the DAO, which is what Compound has and others, by the way, because it's so few people can understand and actually make an educated vote on that they thought that was bad, which is kind of hilarious. In America, we have all this direct democracy stuff where people vote on these propositions, stuff that they can't understand too. But anyways, so that's kind of interesting news from the SEC. It makes our DAO look really good and Compound look really bad.
But a lot of this is just going to be, if we can get the DAO actually being used, I think it'd be great, right? Because also that gives more and more use for the token, right?
Exactly. Because it costs tokens to put up proposals,
right? And you sort of like, there's this view. What's the Libre token for? Well, you need it to vote on projects, and so one of the values of the Curve token was use it to decide what pools get
more Curve. That's it. That's
right?
basically it.
That's the value of the Curve token. So I think if there's the Libre token gives you more voice at the table of the DAO is good for the Libre token.
Yeah.
Yep. That's really the main. So we have those things, and that's kind of, from our perspective, that's mainly what we're.
Yeah, I think that's a good update.
And then the last thing I would say is, with Doug Horn, we've also talked about listing of Libre
on exchanges,
right? And so we're starting to get some proposals from exchanges,
and we're in Miami with a bunch of interesting folks, who are connected to all kinds of levels of exchanges and stuff. So we're talking with them, coming up with some ideas of how we can get some exchanges to look at what we're doing. We're working on a strategy for Brock to give an intro to CZ as well. So,
and Brock is going to be presenting in 30 minutes Libre
on stage.
Yeah,
here in Quantum, which is awesome. So we made sure that.
And he's giving demos every single minute.
Oh, it's awesome.
He's just walking around Miami giving out Bitcoin on Libre.
And he loves it. We just keep fueling with Bitcoin, and he keeps giving it out. So, yeah. So that's kind of an update from our end. I think. Does anyone have any questions about anything else that we went through?
Can we help with anything regarding like business development? Because I understand that, getting into exchanges is important and usage on the DAO, but probably other than the DAO, right? Payment rails or something like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what one of these thinking about something that we don't have, which I think could be also a DAO proposal. This is a good opportunity for a developer, is to build out a reporting tool. As far as I know, there's nothing like this on EOS network, where a merchant who's accepting payments can go and download their history for an account for any time period, like a day, a week, to get those kind of reports that they could easily input into Excel or QuickBooks or whatever, just to get a CSV of a transaction. All right, yeah, see you, Michael. Just
See
get a
you.
CSV of a transaction would be a great merchant tool. It came up this morning actually when Brock was talking with someone about merchant tools. It's kind of like the piece we're missing that Strike has, merchant tooling. So I'd say there's that, and also the ability to generate a QR code with any price in it. Those are kind of two things
I tell you, one other thing we forgot to mention. We have specced out, and and I think there is a need for a better block explorer than we had.
Well, one of our community members actually working on it. This young community manager support guy that we have is working on a block explorer, but we're actually looking to get new block explorers. I think even just improving on the Hyperion Explorer would be very good because that one's very easy to run. It's actually working pretty well. There's a couple small things, but a couple small improvements in there would be just amazing for Libre, and other chains could benefit from it too. So it'd be very nice improvement to have, Tiago.
I think the other thing is, it would be very useful if somehow we could accelerate the ability to get a hold of the EVM code, right?
Getting EVM running would be just amazing.
I mean, we really would like to be able to run from MetaMask, right? That would be
amazing.
Something that would be really useful. Doug just joined.
Here's the Mr. Horn.
Hey guys, apologies. I had to edit my dad's obit, and there were some big glaring things, and we had to get it out to a paper. So otherwise, I would not have been late.
Well, sorry to hear about your father.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that none of the people in his life were omitted or anything like that. So sorry, but I was aiming to be here. So, and I'm here now. Thanks, guys.
We're happy to have you at any time. We just kind of did a little download of what happened the past month, the stuff we're thinking of, and the stuff that's coming up. There's notes on the Miro board, and we're about to transition over to talking about people are just asking what they can do, and we're answering some questions.
I mean, I think the floor is yours. Anybody who wants to,
Yeah. I thought actually what we do is transition into talking about these things on the screen here, which is
let's do
the validator agreement and standards, the core updates, the code updates for the core, and anything else on the board, so we can cover those things. We have some working groups that we're supposed to talk about stuff, and we don't really know what the status of.
Well, the governance working group, I can talk about that because I was leading that, and Adam and Robert and I got together. This was a couple weeks ago, and I put the documents we had gone through together the Telos governance documents, and made proposed amendments that seemed to be in line with what we needed to do, what we aim to do for Libre. And I think they're pretty good. I think one thing that would be great is if we could either all go through those individually, or perhaps we could have a separate meeting where we talk about, where we take people through it and just have, be able to have people have questions or whatnot. I feel like this is one of those things that not much is going to happen with until we could kind of jump in. I think that would be something good to get out of the way. We don't need a ton of governance, but we need something.
We do,
right?
Yeah.
And that's just sort of sitting like I think a lot of the things that we could be doing, that's sitting there, we could move forward on it, but I know we're all busy and we have things going on, but if we could take those sort of next steps, then we could sort of lock those things down. I think there's some of those things in terms with technical stuff as well once we get to code updates. That's great. One note on the choice of jurisdiction. We just left that in from the Telos documents. We had a good reason to choose that for Telos. I don't think it necessarily applies to Libra. So we could pick anything or nothing. But when we talk about that, I can share why we picked what we picked and what it brought us as a group that had an actual sort of entity and an intention to do arbitration, which I don't think we have any of those things with Libre.
Yeah, the choice of jurisdiction is just like how do you want to interact with the exchanges, really. If you guys don't plan on setting up like a identity or a face for the Libre project, you don't really need to set up like an identity per se and operate out of like say the British Virgin Islands. But if you do,
Well, it's very hard. It's very hard to have it to
unless
get
you're pulling some weight with like Brock Pierce or something to get into a exchange. It's difficult without some kind of foundation.
Yeah, and so they want to have a contract with somebody, and then separately, by not stating or having some kind of specific entity, organization, structure, we leave ourselves open to the risk of being interpreted as a general partnership in certain jurisdictions like the U.S. and I think Canada and many other Western nations.
Let me interject
don't want.
one sec just to let you guys know that we actually do have an entity in Panama that we set up originally for Bitcoin Libre, which is called I'm just making some coffee here. It looks like it's overflowing. Which is called Bizan Biz. It's a terrible name, but it's something that we can use. It was kind of chosen by our lawyer in El Salvador. So we can use to write contracts to all of the validators to make everyone a part of that potentially. So anyway, we do have an entity in Panama set up already that we can use. Is the point.
I think that would be great if we have that. If you can give us the information, we can incorporate that and into the documents.
We kind of owe taxes for last year or some kind of fee that they sent us. I might have told them to shut it down, but we can ping them back and be like, yeah, let's keep it up. So I'll find out.
If we do that, then yeah, we should, and there are expected, ongoing costs. We should make some provision for those to be paid either through the DAO or something, right? But yeah, I would say if you have that, it's better to have that and not have to create that. It lets us, get onto exchanges as quickly as possible, which I think is a major.
We do have a US entity called Libre Tech, but I think having the Panama entity might make things easier for the exchanges. Actually,
the Panama identity would definitely make it easier. If you're basing it out of the US, you need like a minimum asset of like $10 million to get on the exchanges.
Yeah, we'll definitely do. The
other part is if you want to be on the up and up with the SEC, you should really be using the DAO to create this foundation, as opposed to just having a foundation. That way, there's like your community decided to create this entity instead of it just being like the validators.
Yeah, I mean, in practical terms, are the same thing right now because the validators are the largest source of votable funds, I believe. But it does, even so, it makes a difference having that originate through the DAO. I think that I'm not an expert in Panama law, but one of the things I've heard is that you can set your ownership there, and we can set that. We could transition whatever initial ownership there is into ownership by the DAO, and that would probably suffice for a while. Mainly because people wouldn't look too closely at it and until a time where DAO ownership and entity structure and whatnot are a little bit better understood by national laws. I mean, one of the problems, time is on our side there. So I I I think it's probably less expensive and less time consuming to transfer the ownership of an existing and do a DBA on an existing uh entity than it is to start a new one.
Great. Okay, well, we'll find out.
But I'm not a lawyer, so but
I think
that's
I think
seems
it's
like I think we have to make decisions, guys. I think we have to make decisions on be very practical about decisions because we have a limited amount of money, limited amount of time, and limited amount of people to do these things. So I think that I think we're better off just trying to do what we can actually do and make progress forward rather than I hate to say, rather than worrying too much about doing things the generally accepted way. If we do that, if we wait and do everything the right way, it's nothing's going to happen.
That sounds fair.
Yeah. At the same time, I think you don't want to mess it completely up. Like I remember Eve was saying they had a lot of discussions with their legals to set up the ENF and the ENV and whatnot, and make sure their actions are not making EOS a security and whatnot. So there's a lot of legals involved that I also don't know much about, but I know that you don't want to mess it up because it's hard to undo.
That's very true, but the needs there of a group that's already worth somewhere around $1 billion, very different than what we have. And I think we should be realistic. Absolutely, we should do the best we can. I don't look at this as us being not cautious. I look at this as us accepting the fact that these laws simply don't exist or are unclear and very hard to comply with, therefore. So it's not like we're saying, oh, we'll do whatever we want. We'll say, the rules be damned. We're saying nobody knows what the rules are. Let's do what makes the most sense and be responsible, but not be paralyzed by the lack of clear regulation around these things. That'd be my position.
The cost for the year is like something like $800, so it's not too bad. There might be a late fee associated with registering it again, but I think it's worth it to keep the Panama entity alive. Even if we can even rename it, but the name honestly doesn't even matter. It actually doesn't even matter. So that's good. Okay, so we'll get the name over to you guys and the information about it, so you can include that in the contracts.
We'll make some provisions. I would suggest that we make provisions in the DAO for maybe not having to have, so I would suggest that we have a fund that is a BP discretionary fund that comes from that is funded at a certain level from the DAO, from which we pay things like those taxes and regulatory fees and filings and
I'm
whatnot.
fine with that personally, as long as it goes through the DAO. There's a DAO vote, and we get a significant number of people voting, then it's fine for us to do whatever. Yeah.
Well, I'd say that I would suggest that the DAO votes on the distribution, the ongoing distribution of funds, like a trickle distribution, like we use on Telos, into this fund, and then once the funds are there, they are deployed by the block producers, so that we're not having to get a DAO vote every time there's an $800 tax bill or something like that. But that the DAO has officially approved the dissemination of these funds, until it decides to change that. That's what we did with Telos, and it seems to work pretty well. So I would suggest that for us as well, but not do a bunch of things. Just say, hey, every month this much is going to flow into an account that is controlled by a 2/3 plus one vote of the active block producers at any given time, and that these are designated for things like exchange listing fees, corporate filings, any of those types of things. That's what I'd suggest, because if we have to do a DAO thing for every single one of these, it's going to be slow and painful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree. I know Ben left the room and I think he's on mute. So
Yeah, I agree as well. It'll take way too long if you're gonna do every single transaction via like a DAO vote.
Yeah, we definitely agree that these things kind of fall in buckets, and so we'll have a bucket for. But just like it's sort of like we don't need to do, if we're going to pay for Edenia to do some blockchain stuff or something, we just say Edenia is going to be paid to do some blockchain stuff. Here's roughly what they're going to be doing. Here's how you do it.
She's actually here and working.
Yeah, let's just have one pool that goes towards core development, additional core development work. All those things. I mean, we're meant to be, I think, a streamlined organization, blockchain that doesn't. It's not. We're not pitching ourselves on governance as our. We have it, but that's not. We're not needing a big overhead structure. Let's just make sure that it's that our rules give some reason for it, and that it gets voted via the DAO initially, and any updates via the DAO, and then I think we're going to be covered.
Yeah, so we think there's definitely, just in terms of core development on the chain. So we think that there's Edenia stuff, which is all kind of open source and communal. And then the other stuff is we are going to push for the dashboard to be open source, and I'd love to have multiple hosted versions of the dashboard as well. So we're not looking at one central point that everybody goes to. We'd like to have multiple dashboards, multiple people running the dashboard.
They're open to defending a business case for this.
Okay, so yeah, so I just want to make sure. So we're going to try to have Ken, who built the dashboard, kind of try to work towards open sourcing that, and then, and to me, that's like a general it's a blockchain level thing, whether you're using Bitcoin Libre or Anchor or whatnot. Just this is a community resource. We should open source it, and we should have multiple people running that dashboard, ideally.
Sure, if we start as an intermediary step. Yeah, as an intermediary step, if we start with just publishing the API, which you opened that up, the Swagger page for me, that has everything anyone would need to create their own dashboard. So I think that's a good step we could do right away. We may only still have one dashboard. I think the dashboard looks great, but anyone could access that API and build everything that's there, or plug that into anything, as long as they have public access to the Swagger documentation page.
We actually host it on Netlify right now, so it's almost free to host that on any static site service. Just needs access to the right API URLs, and so we'd also like to see more people running the APIs, so you could choose which node you want to connect to. If you're an advanced user. So lots of good stuff.
Okay. So if you have that, let us know. We'll add Nathaniel and I will add a second API node if it's just pushing it out there, and then perhaps there's a load balancer that we could put in front of it.
Yep, we can. Yeah, we have. Robert and I both kind of maintain the load balancers that we use right now.
Okay. Then we can add the individual load points to the documents, and that'll be great.
Yeah. And testnet.libre.org is the. Yeah. The dashboard API is not on there yet, but it's something we can absolutely add in. Yep, exactly. Yes, we have.
I just want to make sure that Ben gets hit by a bus and we really want to have redundancy, just
Yep.
built into the system as much as possible.
I think we're doing well. I mean, I think the other thing we did recently, which I didn't include in the update, is we moved a lot of signatures to multi-sigs for the board Libre, which is a 3 out of 5 multi-sig between Quantum, Hot Start, Crypto Blocks, Rio, and Amsterdam, I believe. Or Sphere, actually. It's Sphere instead of Amsterdam. But that's the kind of thing we can actually start moving over to the BPs as soon as we get everything stable.
Yeah.
Like after the audit, after we make sure all this stuff is working. And I'm also running cron jobs to update the contracts for the rewards for things like the farming and the mint claims, and so a lot going on. But we actually only have a few minutes. We have to leave here in like probably 6 minutes. You guys are welcome to stay on and continue discussing, but I think just in terms of the 30 producer schedule, the code is up and ready for review, and there is a DAO proposal that failed once already. But as soon as Edenia gets the code update for the voting to use the stake tokens instead, to use the voting power, which should be any day, they're really working hard to get that through, and I think they're just pending a testnet test that they want me to do. So when that gets through, anyway, we'll start a multi-sig for the BPs to update the staking contract, which will be our first major code update, so that the DAO could work. So stay tuned for that in the next few days. I think that's the only other thing from this board that I can think of, that the geographic scheduling and the voting update to include 4 validators, that stuff hasn't been done yet. I suggest we go step by step through these and do one, test it out, make sure it works, and then do the next one. So yeah, we should be testing.
The more we can put these things to DAO votes and show that the changes that we've made are, approved by DAO votes, the better our argument will be in the future that we're actually run by the DAO, even though it's basically the same people right now.
Yeah. And the more individual entities voting in the DAO is good.
It's more transparency too,
Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's basically all the updates we had. Does anyone have any questions while we're still here for a few minutes from our end? Or anything you guys want to talk about, discuss?
When's our next meeting, and what do we want to have accomplished by that next meeting?
Great question.
Great. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Robert, why don't you just pick 2 times and schedule it, and then those of us who can make it. Sounds perfect, honestly. I love Thursday.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert, for taking the initiative to put that together, and this one, of course. And thank you to everyone for showing up.
Yeah.
Awesome
Really
to see you
appreciate it,
guys.
yeah.
We have people showing up from all over the world, and it's awesome. Yeah, we're doing great.
Okay,
We're
guys.
excited about the future.
Thanks,
Hey.
guys.
Hey.
Congratulations
Thanks for
on
having
all
us.
the great. Congrats on all the progress so far to everybody.
Yeah, congrats to everybody. It's going awesome. So we're excited.
Yep.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.